Welcome, folks, to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. This is Ralph Visatola, co-host of the program. This is one in a series of interviews of natural healers and scientists that we are preparing for our March 9, 2016 Telethon for the 5th anniversary of the events at Fukushima in Japan. Roland Thomas is our guest. He is a naturopath and a scientist. He's talking to us from Canada. And Roland, can you please start off by giving us your background a little bit about who you are? And then I understand you have a presentation for us by slide that we'll all be able to watch while you discuss the information you have.
Yes, good morning, Ralph. Yes, Roland Thomas. And I've got a Bachelor of Science from Montreal. I studied there, actually studied substance abuse as a result of having lived the experience and having seen my family suffer from too much drinking and so forth. And I came out of it on top, studied the matter in depth, and continue to be aware of addictions, which, for example, we're all addicted to food and other substance, right?
Indeed.
So it's not just about marijuana. It's a very broad spectrum. It's been really an area of research for me, particularly when I not only studied nutrition, advanced nutrition from a quantum perspective, but also techniques such as yoga, Tai Chi, and Qigong, and energy, the whole spectrum of potential source for prevention and healing in all sorts of chronic conditions, whether it be emotional or physical. I also became a naturopath and practiced for a decade in Colorado and learned quite a lot of modality. And I learned mostly that there's a lot of nonsensical approach to health, a lot of allopathic model that naturopath or other alternative medicine people and folks and solutions are really not so much better than pharmaceuticals. When people apply too many supplements or too much of vitamin C, thinking that the medicine is in the vitamin C, I've really intensified my awareness that the medicine is within the human body. And about 20 years ago, I met a scientist from Russia, Dr. Michael Kiriak, and really changed confirmed my findings that really the healer is within, and really began to focus from a scientific perspective. He's a scientist himself, a PhD in cellular nutrition, studied with the Academy of Science of the former Soviet Union, and perfected blends of algae over a period of 15 years, supported by the Academy of Science and eventually the Ministry of Agriculture in Russia. Very vast, extensive research, and I really latched on to him as a mentor and to his finding. And today I would like to present via many slides, which we will slide through, and I would like to shed light on his discovery, on the research, which really will broaden the listeners' understanding of the application of such to even Fukushima, or as it was applied after Chernobyl, and to our day-to-day solution for protection from the continuous viral attack and pollution attack that we are subjected to by the fault of ourselves or government or the EPA or the FDA. We can blame anyone we want, but at the end of the day, we want to become warriors. We want to become ninja. We want to not depend on others to protect ourselves. And the solution that I'm going to present really fits that model. So enough of me, and I'm grateful for having met Dr. Michael Kiriak, and I've really been educating and promoting this solution along with my philosophy of practicing good fitness through whether you'd like to do yoga or qigong or walking or running, good diet, a very strong emphasis on a highly plant-based diet. I'm not saying no to anything, but certainly the bulk of the diet. And otherwise, I've really been walking away from any concept of medical model, if you wish, whereby the medicine and the doctor is outside, rather focusing on you becoming the scientist and you and knowing that the energy, regeneration, healing, repair, strength, and immunity is within. And basically, my presentation will really make that clear, I hope.
Very good. Looking forward to this.
Mm.
So share screens with us, and let's hear the information.
Very well, and I suggest we do away with my beautiful visage so we can focus on the slide.
You look
And I'm
healthy,
really
by the
gonna,
way. You look healthy. You look intelligent. And this is something that we don't find in many faces these days. So, looking forward.
thank you for that. And I am healthy. I'm 66 and I run marathon. And 20 years ago, I was literally fat and lazy and pessimistic in regards to my future. I really have reinvented myself, and I continue to do that on a day-to-day basis.
As we say, walking your talk, or in your case, running your talk. Love it.
Correct.
All right.
So can we see the slide?
Yes, Bioalgae Concentrates Academy. All right.
Yes.
Are you associated with
Yeah.
the academy?
Well, I do present somewhat in a format of a series of presentation to introduce new interested users or curious people about the product. It's a mouthful, so I break it down often. But today I'm going to present to you the full thing. I've got 40 slides, and really, if we want to do this in an hour or less, we're just going to fly through it. And I hope the visual is going to help people grasp. A picture tells 1,000 words. Absolutely.
And of course, and folks, you can always pause while you're watching the podcast and take a look at these things. The website is Awakening the Genius Within. Roland Thomas, help awaken us.
Yeah, this website is actually a online book that tells the entire story of Dr. Kiriak and the Soviet Union and why this project came about and where and when and so forth.
Excellent.
While if you're interested in the product, I've got another website at the bottom left, bioage.com/utopia, and that is an emphasis on protection and on Fukushima. And I urge you to consider exploring this product as a prevention. First, you want to be, if there is more and more toxicity, you want to be ready rather than wait for being polluted and then having to, cleanse and defend and heal. Right. You want to be, protection is the mother of inventions. The scientist community of the Soviet Union, under the leadership of Dr. Michael Kiriak, looked at eventually microalgae. There's macroalgae, which are visible, which are big sea vegetables and so forth. And there's thousands upon thousands of microalgae, those that are somewhat bacteria size, invisible to the naked eye. The first ever living organism on Earth was, and can you see my pointer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yes, was 3.5 billion years ago a cyanobacteria, a single cell algae, which really was the foundation of all future living matter on the planet. It stayed, the planet was covered with algae for thousands and even a billion years until a couple billion years ago when more complex organisms were born, such as multicell spirulina, for example, which is a spiral-shaped type algae. And eventually we had sea animals or fish or living organism eventually on Earth, and then we had the plants were born and so forth. And to this day, that cyanobacteria, the first ever living organism, has remained present, the only organism that has not been extinguished ever since. And we came not so long ago. We modern human. Dr. Kiriaki and his team looked at over 1,000 different types of algae over their research in a period of the first 8 or 12 years. And eventually they latched on to 4. They're quite known nowadays. They're the spirulina families, of which, by the way, there's a couple hundred different variants. It's not as simple as buying just spirulina. Here we have 4 different algae were selected to form a blend for reasons of complementation, for balance, for synergy. Here I show a small list amongst 15,000 potential nutrients in this blend of 4 algae. I'm only listing those that are quite common, that are the gross, that are the highest level in the blend. But if we carried on down the column, we would have endless types of phytonutrients and enzymes and so forth. But the blend was formulated to balance in the sense that certain algae, like green algae, don't have a lot of vitamin C. And it's a very important component for human assimilation. So the vitamin C in this scenario is brought in by another algae, the Dunaliella, which is famous not just for vitamin C, but for a very high level of beta-carotene, or mixed carotenoid, which people consider antioxidant, but it has a much more important property, particularly in the realm of photosynthesis and energy transfer. And we're going to be talking a bit about that later on. We'll clarify that. But that's the crux. The most important part of the concept is the combination of 4 to make a sum larger than this, or the whole larger than the sum of its part, creating a synergy and an explosion, not only in the blend itself, but once it's consumed in the human body, the repercussions are extraordinary. 15 years of intensive, extensive tests and trials. When is it that a country sits behind a health or nutritional project in America? This doesn't happen. It happens, it's typically done by profit machine, right? Pharmaceutical industry. Nobody has the money to study algae or herbs and so forth. Nobody does, because we don't have the money. And even if we find an extraordinary natural solution, FDA is not going to back us up. It's going to be, you're not allowed to claim any medicinal benefits in the natural world, as we know, unfortunately.
Yes, as we know, indeed.
While, yeah, and you know, it is definitely the way it is. We now know, myself, after 30 or 40 years of navigating the alternative medicine arena, as well as being a scientist and understanding very well that we can save a person from absolute death from an infection or after an accident and so forth. So I'm not against our advanced science.
Indeed.
But in Russia, it was allowed. And the fact that the Academy of Science stood behind this multi-billion-dollar project, which nobody knew about, while we were going to the moon and Russia was going to the moon, this project was going on as well. A very quiet project, not in the same league as going to the moon. But here's the crux, or an example of the size of this project. This is one of the main research facilities, the facility in the middle, which is really a bioreactor, a large housing to grow algae, as well as the labs and the staff and the management of this 1.5 million poultry, egg-laying poultry farm, which was picked up during after a declining phase of many years, from 77 to 85, as a base for proving the concept. This was after about 10 years of research. They were able to conduct comparative tests between the facility housing 75,000 chicken compared to another 75,000 chicken. So undeniable evidence.
Yes.
Putting aside the placebo, because animals don't lie. Animals, you're able to give every chicken the same diet, so the proof of concept was undeniable when compared against the witness group We see here that there was an elevation of productivity by 20% in the first year and so forth of implementing the results of the research. The benefits verified for the first year and going forward, by the way, were extraordinary, as we can see here on the list on the table presented. And since you can stop your screen, I urge you to read those benefits and get a sense of the extraordinary results of applying this food, which is really a food, to the diet of the chicken. We see on the right Dr. Kiriak here in that center, in that facility, showing on national television in 1985, when he was nominated the Person of the Year for the results of that farm in Moldova, which was a satellite state of Russia, that a jar of algae, of the blend of algae that they had developed, could save truckloads of the regular alfalfa feed that they feed the chicken.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. It's like, how can just a jar save truckloads? And at the bottom, it's a sample of an egg, a larger egg, stronger egg with bigger shell, stronger shell with calcium and so forth. This is an experiment in Colorado. A gentleman farmer, a customer of ours, that implemented it in his small farm, and he was amazed to see the taste, the color, and the health of the chicken.
Indeed.
This test was reproduced in Montreal when Dr. Kiriak left Russia in 1996. He was trying to get the Canada Agriculture Department to adopt his findings. He thought he could work with the government just like he did in Russia. And it doesn't work the same way in our Western world, as we know. So he was not rejected, but he got a grant, and he was able to do this test 28,000 animals twice, back to back, to prove undeniably the same thing that he had proven in Russia. And it showed an increase in the protein content of the eggs by 20%, the reduced bad fat eventually to 100%, a decrease in mortality rate of newborn chicks by 80%. We lose up to 10 chicks for every 100 new chicks born in our industry. And by applying this feed to the feed, that drops by 80%. Just less than 2 chicks are lost.
Considering that countries such as the United States and Australia and even Canada, the high vaccination countries in the world,
oh my goodness,
have the highest infant mortality rates, I could see how this might have an impact.
Oh my goodness, there's no doubt. And they did the research on that large farm without antibiotics. They removed it. It's proved. So the increase in immunity, as shown by here on the bottom right, 70% reduction of infectious situation without antibiotics.
And this is just adding the 4-algae supplementation to their feed.
Correct. Wow. In a very small, minuscule amount. We're talking 1 gram per 2 kilograms of feed. On another large facility, a 15,000 dairy cow facility that were having cancers and low productivity. Again, here the research applied about 1 gram of algae per day to each cow. Yeah. And they had hundreds of farm workers in Russia that they could have to help. And they would run every morning or twice per day to feed each cow their portion to add to their feed. But again, here I urge you to read the benefit, stop the cancers, endocrine issues with the new cows. Mad cow disease was unheard of. Reduction of infectious of the mastitis problem, which is a huge problem in our facility nowadays, in our large farms. Stop the use of antibiotics and growth hormones, and still got more milk per cow per day. Less feed was necessary. Truckloads of feed were saved. The quality of the milk was beyond expectation. Instead of a 3.2%, we were looking at a 4% fat, 10% more protein, 10% more fat. Decrease of somatic cells, leukemia, in other words, in the milk. and so forth. We have a lot of
Okay.
charts to go through, so I'm really going to
Keep
go a
on
little
moving. Keep on
faster.
moving. This is exciting. You go
Yeah,
faster.
I mean,
Are we
uh,
dealing with a product here that in addition to the nutritional benefits of the four types of microalgae, you're also getting a type of probiotic effect? Am I
well,
hearing
well,
that or
absolutely, and
yeah?
also the product itself is bacteria. Algae are bacteria, particularly the blue-green algae.
Ah,
So no problem there, but also the enzyme count is in the thousand, food enzyme.
got
But
it.
it's the repercussion of introducing this food in your diet, which I will show later. You'll understand why such a small amount of food can cause such benefits. Here's an example, right in your face, of applying 1 gram of this blend to this huge bowl. And to all the mammal tested, by the way, there's an increase of 400% in the sperm count, 400% in the motility, which is the speed, the energy of the sperm, and 400% lifespan.
Wow.
In other words, instead of living 20 minutes, the sperm can live 2 hours, for example. So that shows vitality. And it shows the relationship of the food to these sperms are born daily to the tunes of millions, right? So it's not like it's feeding the sperm themselves. It's the fact that regeneration of sperm is more powerful and they're born healthier, like every cell in the body. But
Mm-hmm.
with this, you can prove easily. And we're going to talk about the mitochondria. The body of the sperm is made of mitochondria that respires the sugar, right? And
Right.
then fly to the egg. So it's about energy. We'll review that later. A dairy cow farm was used in Canada. Again, he was trying to court the government of Canada. And he proved undeniably, here we see results after 36 months on a farm with about 50 animals, a highly performing farm to start with, of an increase in milk production by 29% annually. That's a bomb. I mean, that's unbelievable in
Huge.
that industry.
Yeah.
An increase in the fat and the protein, and those are the two major factors of quality of milk. And this without reducing infection, etc. And he also, this fellow, Alain Forget, and that's Dr. Kiriak by his side. I took this picture, by the way, a few years back. He was amazed that he was able to save 216-foot chopper boxes of feed a month. Unbelievable.
Wow.
This is a case that I was overseeing. I met this wonderful lady, Mary, who had moved from Los Angeles, retiring. She had been a research investigator for some lawyer firm. And she bought a farm of 75 bighorn sheep, a herd. She wanted to promote them and breed them to sell to collectioners and to other breeders and to rich farmers, to as pets, because these are not wool sheep; they're bighorn sheep.
Got it.
And they were diagnosed with Johne's, which is an infectious condition, which basically decimate the herd in a matter of years. The vet, by law, actually asked her to euthanize the entire farm, and you cannot have any animals on the farm for, I think it's like 4 years, because that bacteria remains on any surface. It's a very resistant. Yet she said, no way, Jose. She had met us, and she tried to apply the algae to the animals. And 7 years later, the animals are alive. Many have been sold, and many have passed from natural. But I took this picture on my way to Chicago a couple of years ago. How by simply one capsule, one less than 1 gram of this algae added to the diet of the animal, they were saved from this deadly condition. And she shared many benefits, such as the horn of the 1-year-olds are bigger than the horns of 2 and 3-year-olds. So that goes to showing protein synthesis, collagen, for example.
And I can see how all of this, of course, applies to the ionizing radiation damage coming from Fukushima, which came
I
from Chernobyl,
absolutely,
and which is now
absolutely.
coming from that radioactive gas leak in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's 65,000 different new pollution that we don't know anything about. The EPA has no chance of monitoring the variants, the combinations of pesticides and herbicides and all of the new chemicals and the plastic. We are inundated, yet we are alive. So I don't want to be pessimist. The human body is the most extraordinarily resilient, but we have to do something about it so to not become half alive at 50 or 60 years old, because it is impacting us. The fact that we're surviving must be admired and capitalized upon. This shows here research that we've done, informal research with a deadly conditions called IMHA in dogs particularly, which kills them in a matter of weeks after they're diagnosed. The rate of loss is 50% within weeks of the diagnosis. While when applying the algae, and we get these dogs when they're already finished with the vet, when they've tried everything, we get them, they're on the ground, they can't walk. We have a survival rate. We've tracked hundreds of animals now since 2008 of 50% plus, of 60% plus from near death. And we share this with vets. We have a lot of vets in our customer base, and we save a lot of animals. This is my dog, Maya. She's 15 years old soon. She's never been to the vet except for one time for vaccination coming into Canada. By law, we had to have her vaccinated. She is lean. She's mean. I mean, in a good way. And as you can see, she doesn't look like a 90 or 100-year-old dog, really. That's what 15 years is. And these types of dog, they die at 10, at 9. They have cancers. She's been eating this algae since she was a few weeks old. People will want to know, how is it possible? I mean, I've been sharing incredible stuff with you. How does it work? How can it be that such a small amount of food, literally, bio superfood is the commercial name, it's 4 algae blended together. This is 1/3 of a gram, this capsule, and delivers so many benefits across 20 species of animal tested. Each in their own unique way benefited from higher productivity, longevity, longer life, more milk, more eggs, uh, larger litters, higher quality of the hair or the coating, natural detoxification, anti-tumorigenesis. The research was performed to find solution for cancers that were decimating that part of Russia when they started to bring together all these small farms on these massive farms. They started to have hygiene issues, infectious issues, cancers galore, tumors all over the place. They use antibiotic as a solution, and that, along with grouping these animals in these large facilities, cuts the production by 20, 30, 40%. And the longevity of animals producing milk or laying eggs.
Very interesting indeed. I'm looking at the slide that you just had on, which has some interesting
This one
points
here?
on it. And the one thing I would like to point out for our audience, of course, when people who are offering nutrients use a word like anti-inflammatory, they're not using it as a medical term. I know the FDA, for example, here in the U.S., thinks that any use of the word anti-inflammatory or inflammatory has to do with treating disease. And of course, we know that that's not true. We're actually talking about using the nutrient to support the normal
Correct.
response to inflammation.
Correct.
Inflammation is actually good for the body in some ways because it's part of the healing
100%.
process.
You're 100% right. Always we use what this food is. A food supports energy,
Right.
and renders energy to support the natural, all of those property, endurance, energy, strength, productivity, eye health, fertility, are all qualities of the cells of the organism, whether it be animal or human.
Yeah. And
The
so on the
speed of the
slide,
brain, the
each of these
speed of the brain is not a function of the medicine. It's a function that we have at birth.
excellent,
About
absolutely,
supporting.
absolutely. Yeah, and the same
Correct.
thing with the other ones: anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, anti-seizure. What you really mean are supporting normal response. We don't want the FDA to get the idea that Natural Solutions Foundation is talking about treating disease with nutrition. We know because the government of the United States tells us, and the World Health Organization tells us that nutrients don't treat disease. In fact,
Correct.
that's and since treating disease means suppressing symptoms, and that sort of thing. We don't want to do that. We want to help people become more healthy. And the capsule that I see before me in this image, with its green life-filled contents, to me is the opposite of pathology. It is pro-life. And that's very powerful. All right, I'm sorry. I know we have a lot to
No, no,
cover, so let me get out of the way. And I'm
I love
fascinated
it.
by what you're teaching us today.
I love it. You get it. It's absolutely, we're in the business where I told you earlier, I walked away personally from the medical model
Uh-huh.
towards an energy model. And we're talking
Yep.
about energy, and that's what the next part of the presentation will show, that it's not a medicine. It's a food. It's an efficient food to feed the engine in your Lamborghini, except that we human have thousands of these little engines in our cells, and we have 100 trillion cells, and so that's a lot of engines to feed. But if
Yep.
you
And
can
when the
get it
body
done,
and when the body is trying to deal with the toxic attack from whether it's from ionizing radiation or from various chemicals and toxins in our environment, this seems to me that this type of nutrition is precisely what the body needs.
it is. It's
Yeah.
perfect food, as you will see, as
Onward,
we
onward.
have seen it already. But now we're going to look at how little is needed to cause such benefit. It's quasi impossible, and that's why I'm passionate about sharing the mechanism of action. Let's start with the base. The foundation is that we're going to pick on the colors, on the spectrum of colors in this food. There are hundreds of phytonutrients, thousands of phytonutrients, but particularly the carotene content, which are, you've all heard of the such beta carotene, alpha carotene, beta carotene found in carrots, or lutein or lycopene found in tomato, phycocyanine, and many other, zeaxanthin, and so forth. There's over 1,000 known of these pigments. They're considered antenna pigment, but they cover a spectrum of color, from red to orange to yellow, and the green chlorophyll is one of those, by the way. So that's the purpose of the blend, was to bring about a much broader spectrum. And you'll notice on the right of the chart, I'm showing a chloroplast, which is the agent of transfer of the photosynthesis of the light of the sun, which is captured in the plant, and that the first consumer can benefit from the energy stored in the chloroplast, transferred to the mitochondria within our cells. The mitochondria are the engines of the human cells. We have about 2,000 per cells. And these mitochondria consume the sugars and the proteins and some fats to some extent to fabricate ATP energy. We're electrical beings. And that magic is called photosynthesis. And we all learned that in our first biology class, right? But now we forget, and then we start waiting for vitamin C and vitamin D and my omegas, and we talk nutritionist talk. My mother died at 90 plus years old. Wonderful woman, never took a supplement nor drugs, except when she had 12 babies. And sometimes in the hospital, she was imposed some sort of drugs. She didn't know the name of anything. All she would say is, Roland, go get me some of this at the grocery store, please. Go get me some apple or some oranges. She never said omega-3 or vitamin C or vitamin D. That was not part of the language. What has happened in the last 50, 60 years is the nutritionists have taken over. And the supplement industry has taken over. And we are told there's no more yogurt. It's yogurt probiotics now. I remember making my own yogurt 40 years ago, which was just wonderful. I never thought about probiotic. I was just eating yogurt. Anyway, here's a perspective that people are not aware of. We have heard in the past of the food pyramid, right? Different variants, and the FDA has changed it over and over because they failed every time. The old food pyramid showed meat at the top. We should eat meat and dairy, right? And then they had breads, and then eventually they had legumes and vegetables at the bottom. Today they have changed it drastically to reflect the fact that we need to eat more plants, and they kept the meat and the dairy. They're protecting those large industries. Here we're not talking about proteins and meats or any of that. We're talking about the sun, bringing the sun into our cell, into the mitochondria. That's the name of the game. It's an energy game. This chart, I want you to try to understand it as you have time to, shows that the sun is the only way that there's any living life on the planet, but it's 99% diffused or lost, that energy that comes to us on the planet. But the remaining 1.28% or 1% is used by plants to become plants. That's called photosynthesis. And you've all heard of chlorophyll when you were at school, but it's much broader than just chlorophyll. In essence, the chart shows that the first consumers of plants lose upwards of 75% of the energy potential, but subsequently, a carnivore eating a plant eater will lose another 75% of the potential energy, and so forth, up to the tertiary consumer, for example, an eagle that consumes a fox that consumes mice. There's less and less energy as you go away from the plant. But specifically, I wanted to show that chart because if you'll see that I've circled the word algae as well as cyanobacteria, because they are also considered major producer of energy, capturer and producer of energy. And it's not all species, but the cyanobacteria specifically is singled out amongst 100,000 different types of algae on Earth. Cyanobacteria is singled out as the most efficient producer. It's a producer of energy and releaser of its energy. Up to 100% of the energy potential in the cyanobacteria becomes available to the first consumer. That's why I wanted to show this chart.
And we should become the first consumers, what you're suggesting. Very good.
Absolutely. In other words, salmon consume algae and they become rich in
Right.
omega, right?
You got it.
Well, and so forth. So the bottom of the energy food chain is not just the omega. There's all sorts of. But the reason, the rationale for the efficiency of these algae is the presence of these pigments that I alluded to earlier. And I'm listing a dozen here that are components of the bioalgae, of the biosuperfood. And you'll see they're quite famous: alpha carotene, beta carotene, chlorophyll. I mean, these are known. And we have here astaxanthin at the bottom, which is known as the king of all carotenoid because it can beat vitamin C or vitamin E by hundreds of times in terms of efficiency factor. Why is that? Because they're considered antenna pigment. You see their elongated shape gives them ability to support transferring and crossing cellular membranes, including the blood-brain barrier, which is the crux of the reason for the functionality of biosuperfood, such efficient benefit. They work in teams, but also I want to show here the comparison to vitamin C, for example, in the middle. Vitamin C has more of a basketball shape, if you wish. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have the same ability to cross and span across cellular membrane. This being a cut of a cellular membrane, you'll see that the red astaxanthin in this case is shown to span across and cover and protect and allow transfer, as well as here we have beta carotene lying into the membrane, while vitamin C will linger, doesn't have that same penetration. It's not its purpose. So I'm giving you a little bit of science, not too much. Well, I mean, it's not
good.
that important.
It's good. This is exactly what the audience for the Dr. Rima Truth Reports wants to see and hear. We want to understand the science that's going to underlie the remedy. And folks, remember what you're hearing about is how the algae, and we're going to work this into how that fits into radiation poisoning. Go ahead.
You know, everybody brags and claim all sorts of benefits from all sorts of supplements, right? We have thousands and thousands of solutions in America. And it is well known amongst the leaders that 97, 98% is crap. And so the reason why I present the science is to help people choose, because they don't know where to go. I mean, everybody's promoting something, and there's not a lot of science behind any of it. Who has done research with millions of animals?
Right, got it.
I mean, you got let's say Prevagen, which is promoted on CNN now. billions of dollars, millions of dollars of ads, commercial ads. They perform a test with 15 people, a memory test with 15 people for 3 months. 15 people taking the supplement, 15 people not taking it, and that becomes science. No way, right? We have placebo, everybody has a different diet. It's no proof at all. And I assure you, if you consume biosuperfood, you will remember. In other words, your memory, your brain speed is going to go right off the chart. I assure you, experiment it. You will feel it. You will feel it in your bone. You will feel it in your muscle. You will feel it in your frequency. You'll actually start feeling how your body vibrates because it's about frequency. It's about resonance. It's about coherence in your body. It's not about power or force because we are nothing but energy. It's a matter of fine-tuning it like we used to fine-tune the old carburetor.
Indeed. You're
To
singing
get
our
that
song.
motor to hum. We want to be humming.
I
All
love
right, so we
all
see the color spectrum. We see these antenna pigments. We see at the bottom left the chain of events for supporting energy transfer, bringing our sugars and our protein, right? Those are gross component of energy to the mitochondria. We see the Krebs cycle on the bottom right, which results in ATP fabrication. That is the name of the game.
right.
Food is not medicine. Food is fuel. It's not even energy, with which our cells fabricate energy with, or the mitochondria fabricate energy. We are a refinery, we are a filtration. We bring fuel to the mitochondria, and the mitochondria, just like a combustion engine, fabricate the power. That's the name of the game. And here we see that normal life on the left, we tend to age and we have disease and we're fatigued and we suffer from lack of energy, which results in eventually symptoms of disease. Poor cellular work activity results in we have debris in our cells, we intoxicate ourselves, we have low polarity, hypoxia, viscosity, poor growth, low repair, and death, short life. Right? I mean, that's painting it the way it is, frankly. Most people at 50 years old are a half a life.
You've got it.
But on the right, we
Yeah.
see that when you introduce, by the way, you could introduce better cellular life with many fashion. You start to be fit, you lose the weight, you eat proper diet, you eat some superfood, and you meditate and so forth. But you'll notice that they're all energy support or getting out of the way of your energy. But when you introduce the biosuperfood, undeniably, you can verify your blood because red blood is easy to verify. 20 minutes after consuming the product, you'll see that oxygenation is already brought in. The cells puff up. They detach from one another. They become team. They become a commando team to transport nutrients and oxygen within our body. And then that dissipates, right? Because energy is a function of, it's like fuel injection. We have to continuously feed ourselves. And so this shows increased vitality by introducing the algae in your diet. Okay, so that's very nice, but it's not one capsule that's going to bring energy to 100 trillion cells in your body. So I want to explain the reason why consuming so little can bring so much. Let's look at the brain. In the brain resides major control organ of human health, the hypothalamus, depicted here in the middle of the brain, along with its buddies, its partners, the hippocampus, the thalamus, certainly the pituitary, which is the master gland, and the pineal gland should be shown. But really, the conductor of the orchestra is the hypothalamus. It receives all signals from outside and inside of the body, continuous biofeedback response and reaction. And it continuously adjusts the dials with hormones and peptides and central nervous system to regulate blood sugar, to regulate temperature, to regulate assimilation, to regulate digestion, to regulate, for example, when a dog drools, when he sees food, it's not the mouth that's intelligent. It's the brain that's perceived food. And boom, you have a shower on the floor, right? It's the same thing in the human body. Our pancreas starts to secrete, our stomachs prepare, our mouth starts to salivate. We have amylase, we start to break down nutrients. Vitamin D is secreted at the kidney when it's needed. All hormonal activity are managed by the brain. So I want you to have that picture. And it was verified undeniably by slicing, by dissecting, unfortunately, pigs and other animals during research. Brain activity, brain energy, brain regeneration rather than decay and death and Alzheimer and dementia was verified.
Very good.
Here is the bigger picture. We see the brain and we see all the, and then by the way, this chart would be multiple charts if you wanted to see the true relationship brain to the body. There are hundreds of hormones that are secreted back and forth. And by the way, every protein, every enzyme in our body is a hormone, and every hormone is a protein, and every protein is an enzyme. These words that the medical system
And I
used
guess
to
that means that when GMO so-called food is introduced in the body with novel proteins that mammal bodies have not dealt with in all of history, that we can expect unexpected results.
We can, but what I suggest is we want to become even more energized and vibrant and vital, so we can defend and protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Against imbalance, against poisons, against unknown factors coming into our body, because it's nothing new. We human have grown to be the most sophisticated organism in the animal kingdom. We're the most sophisticated frequency-wise. We have the most complex ability, digestive ability, filtration ability, and utilization. We can take 100,000 variants of food on the planet and we can bring it into our mouth, bring it into the cell and make use of it and eliminate the debris. Don't try to put a potato in your tank, in your gas tank, right? We are much more sophisticated than every other species or animal or organism. So remember that. That's power. You need to capitalize on that. I'm showing here for the sake of an example that is so popular right now. So many people have jumped on the vitamin D wagon. They've been told they have to take vitamin D, otherwise they're going to die of cancer. Like there's no more sunshine. You're finished. It's become like part of the fabric now of society. It used to be vitamin E, vitamin C, magnesium, multi-mineral, multi-this. Then came CoQ10 and an aspirin a day, resveratrol. I mean, they keep coming. I mean, it's endless. And people take 20, 30 supplements, people that I know, my clients. It's the vitamin, it's the shooting star right now is vitamin D. It's a must. I completely disagree. And by the way, 5 years ago, nobody talked about it. What the heck happened? It's a big business out there. But my point is that it's true that people become deficient, not just in D, in B12, in C, and I mean, we become deficient in many, many areas of the body. It's our hormonal production, and it's our vitality and the enzymic capacity and so forth that becomes deficient. So the skin is not as efficient. The kidney is not as efficient. The parathyroid hormone that stimulates secretion of vitamin D becomes weak because the brain function becomes weaker and dormant. And the brain, for example, will stop monitoring the sugar because the guy's eating chocolate bar every hour. So the brain gives up on the pancreas. And the pancreas, so the guy starts to monitor his sugar intake with chocolate. Well, on the right, we see that if you can introduce some means of increasing your hypothalamus energy, that it will want to stimulate again these functions. Literally, there's energy at the skin to fabricate the precursor vitamin D. And the liver stocks the vitamin D, the preparation. And it's the kidney, when receiving a message from the parathyroid gland, that secretes the proper supercharged vitamin D. So remember that. You can start using crutches and crutches and crutches for your deficiencies, for your energy deficiency, or you can try to go back to how your brain used to operate when you were 14 years old.
So you're basically talking
We're
about
able
feeding
to.
food. These are really whole foods in capsule form that you're talking
Absolutely, the
about.
biosuperfood is beyond food. It's like if you consume it, you become organic.
Yeah. Onward. Okay, this is, by the
All
way,
right.
this has been a very
Yeah.
interesting discussion, but we need to move forward because we have limited time.
What about people? Well, we know that the backdrop of all of this presentation was Fukushima and so forth. So I want to produce. Dr. Kiriak had an opportunity to work with humans all along his research, but it was mostly informal. His family, the researchers, and local small clinics. But when came Chernobyl, he had an opportunity living 300 miles from the epicenter. He was invited to attend meetings at Chernobyl. He met Gorbachev at the time. He got some backing for his project, not so much for human, but for rolling out the farm concept across Ukraine, Lutiana at the time. Anyway, he was able to work with people affected with radiation ills in his village and surrounding village around the research facility for the first year and even 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years after the explosion. He was able to work with cases of advanced leukemia or children that basically were losing their hair, including his daughters, from being 300 miles away. The food chain was infected, and as well as there was radiation, airborne radiation for a long time after the explosion. And it was verified by other organizations, but certainly what he saw was many people were saved, and the people that he helped, many people lost their lives. And he learned a lot about the intensity of the blend to use. He was able to learn to increase it for human because human are a worse animal than animals because we're not disciplined. Children didn't want to consume the algae. They want to have milk. They want to have sugar. They want to have chocolate bar. Older adults were already broken, and then they get the attack of radiation. So they're not as easily saved. But the results were extraordinary in elimination of radiation radioactivity levels, verification of leukemia, stabilization of leukemia in 2 3 weeks, etc. And to this day, Dr. Kiriak and ourselves here in the United States have worked with many cases of leukemia and anemia, other blood disorder of people from the region that have moved to America, including many cases of epilepsy in children. But this is a study here. I'm showing a graph of a study that was done in the research university, oncology research university in Quebec, attached to a hospital, which shows that the formula, and there's 3 different sets here, shows that the black bar in the center is the leukemia, no leukemia level, where above or below is a imbalanced blood formula. And this was tested in test tubes or in vitro. And it shows that of the 3 different formula that Dr. Kiriak has formulated, because there are 3 different grades, that the formula 3 is the best to come near stabilization of leukemia. And the formula 1 and 2 are also helpful, but the most efficient is the formula 3. It also shows that in the red bar, that applying a smaller amount, as shown up above on the left in the small quadrant, 0.14 milligram, to the saline solution was more efficient when applied frequently throughout the day than applying a larger amount in one dose. So a small amount frequently, in other words, fuel injection frequently, was able to normalize the health of the blood.
Now this is interesting because after Hiroshima, one of the doctors in Hiroshima found that by feeding people miso soup, frequently during the day, they were much more able to survive the radiation. And I almost think that miso soup might, in some level or other, have similarities to the microalgae.
Well,
not as powerful, of course, not as powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's incomparable, but those people that survived Hiroshima the best were the people that were still eating the old cabbage soup or the old soup and the vegetable. It's not so much miso as those people that suffered the most was those large meat eaters.
Right.
Or obese people. or too much dairy, and imbalanced diet. And those that stuck to the ancient diet, the proper diet, the old Japanese diet, survive because it's all about energy.
Got it.
When you eat too much or you eat too much of one meat and you're lacking the proper balance of nutrients, you're subject to attack. Your frequency is not as good. It's about energy, right?
Yes.
This is a survey that we do every few years, but it shows incredible. Out of 12,000 people surveyed, I mean, it shows the so many benefits that humans have noticed and verified in our application in the United States. I don't want to go over this, but take the time. We have the entire survey in detail available for those that are curious.
Right.
So what is it in such a small capsule that can provide such benefit? Here's an example of how rapid it works. This young fellow at 5 years old, his mother met us at a conference on a Friday night, bought the formula, gave the kid one capsule on the Friday night. And the next morning, for the first time in his life, she saw him button his shirt without coaxing. Normally, she'd have to help him. Come on, Doogie, come on, get out, let's go outside. And he was more friendly in the park with other kids. She noticed that, and she came to see us on Sunday afternoon to give us a hug and cry of joy. And he has been taking the algae. As a matter of fact, his mustache is an algae mustache. He takes smoothies with algae. This boy is a functional autistic boy. He's in a normal school. He says more words. He can balance. He can ride a bicycle. And things that normally he wouldn't have done so fast or at all. Clearer speech and so forth. Extraordinary support of the brain function. This is Dr. Craig Oster. He's a quite famous man that is a fighter for the ALS group. He's a survivor himself, extremely impacted by ALS. He was supposed to have died 18 years ago, according to his doctors. He's a fighter, he's a survivor. When I met him, he was in the shape that you see on the left. Every day exercising, he has assistant. He's a survivor, he's a fighter. After introducing the algae, we can see how his muscle mass gained, just like the bighorn sheep had bighorn. And plus, muscle mass gain, when you make the effort to gain muscle, they remain a lot longer. We have that with bodybuilders, with athletes that we work with. They're so happy because they work out and it stays longer. As I'm happy because instead of losing my ass, it's staying still a little bit firm at 60, right? And under my arms, it's staying up.
Yep, got it.
I assure you people, this is for real. This is a case of, let's talk about immunity. I met Danielle, it's now 14 years ago, really, down with HIV. Doctors were proposing all kinds of medication, depressed, and he changed his diet and introduced the bioalgae, and it's now 14 years later. He's a psychologist. He works in the penal system in California. He's planning to live to be 100 years old without drugs.
Amen.
How about that for immunity support?
Yep.
This is the case of Robin, the lady with her lovely family, was shut down with Lyme's disease. It impacted her bitterly. Plus, she was bitten a couple of times by a brown recluse spider, which are many in Colorado. So she was bedridden and no hope in the world and really weak and, terrible. She introduced algae in her diet, and I think it's written within a matter of a week or two, she started to get up and be functional. And to this day, she takes 8 or so capsules a day. She's functional. Lyme remains in our body, as do Hep C or hepatitis or herpes, as we know. But it's a matter with increased energy to keep the viral load low. It's not about, you can't get rid of viruses in our body, unfortunately. But it's a matter that our energy is so strong, the vibration, the frequency, that the virus, they say, I don't want to be near these cells. So they stay hidden. They stay low. It's called the viral load or the bacterial load, same concept. Or tumor load, because we have tumors every day, right? Tumor potential is always there, but they stay quenched. They're beaten by energy. This is what I used to take before I met Dr. Kiriak 20 years ago.
Hey, good products. I take a few of those.
I mean, I look at the labels on them: 2 per day, 6 per day,
Yeah.
4 per day. I had one for my prostate, for my brain, for my head, for my skin. I mean, I was allopathic galore. And imagine if I had continued. I'd have 2 slides today of that, of what I would be taking, because many new supplements have come on the market. There's no vitamin D here. There's no resveratrol there, right? I would have adopted those for sure, because the claims for resveratrol were unbelievable. You have to take resveratrol.
You know, insofar as testimonials are meaningful, my experience with resveratrol and other vitamins has been very positive. But I also, like you, like your slide, I take a lot of vitamins, and it would be nice to instead get it all from Whole Foods. I certainly.
How about that? How about that?
That's all.
How about that?
You know, I'm telling you, I understand. I got what you're talking about. But instead of wearing eyeglasses, instead of my eyesight being 2450, it's now 2200. And I think it's the resveratrol that may have helped. So in certain circumstances, certain nutrients can be very beneficial. It's always a matter of discretion and intelligence and the a good probiotic base of of microbiome is something that I like. Okay.
Yeah. Well, listen. I never tell people not to take anything. I've done my research, and I've decided to work with stuff that has the actual evidential, empirical evidence.
Yeah. I like
because I'm a highly skeptical
you're
individual.
going down to the bottom of the food chain, as it were, in order to
Yeah.
get the most direct source. That's a very powerful argument.
I found a way, to simplify my supplementation to 0. I don't supplement. This is a food. It's a complement to my diet. I have more vitality. I've reinvented myself. I am slim. I run marathon. I can't wait to be 100. I mean, it's amazing. And I mean, literally. And then now I've eliminated my chair. I work standing all day. Because sitting is the new smoking. You've heard that expression.
I do that too much. Let me tell you, I sit too much. So we've come up to the end of our hour time slot, but bring us through what you have. That's it. We're at the end. Seriously?
Yeah, that was the last slide. Good timing.
Thank you, Roland.
Now, the awakeningthegeniuswithin.com is free. Go read that book. If you want a hard copy, we'll mail it to you for free. Please do yourself a favor. And if you're interested to visit the product, use the link bioage.com/utopia, because that Utopia area page has a relationship with Fukushima. There's a wonderful video there as well. And send us email, ask us questions. We're here to help you understand this product and introduce it in your life to protect yourself from the thousands upon thousands of attacks that we're subjected to on a daily basis.
All right, very good. And to sum up, the conclusion here is that the 4 microalgae formula was developed by Russian scientists who had the opportunity to see its benefit after Chernobyl, and therefore that's the direct relevance to our telethon, which is commemorating the 5th anniversary of the events at Fukushima. Roland Thomas, scientist and naturopath from Canada, thank you ever so much for sharing with us science and information. Powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Ralph.
All right.